Yo! Welcome back to Calloused Hands. I am very well caffeinated this morning. Drinking out of my teal coffee cup because I have birds on the brain. Obviously, we're in the middle of the hunting series, and I've got some super cool ideas for next year already. I'm excited. We're getting into it. So today's episode, I think I had a different direction, and I don't ever want my memory to play tricks on me, but I think I had a different direction that I wanted to go. But then I heard an episode of a podcast that I've started listening to that's on hunting that made me think about like this whole series and are you prepared and everything like that. And I started thinking like it kind of changed the direction I wanted to go with this. So the idea of being prepared, and we have to be prepared for every scenario when we're hunting. We have to be prepared for every scenario when we're going about our faith walk and different things that apply. Whenever it comes to both, relationships are very important. Relationships are important to life, and so this lesson is going to be very applicable to both. And if you aren't a hunter and you really enjoy this series anyways, this is going to be applicable to your regular life as well as your Christian walk, which should be very intertwined anyway. That being said, the topic that they were talking about was talking with friends and whatnot and different people about sharing information, specifically about duck hunting. And it was very much, certain people get more out of them than other people. And it's because of how they've been treated by said people in the past or whatever. Or maybe just like it's somebody they don't know or whatever. Fill in the blank with any scenario. And so I started thinking about that, and it made me think about my own journeys with different people and everything like that, and how people do get the different sides of us, and that is okay. There's a few verses I want to go to right away because I want to address best friends first because it's the easiest one in my mind, and we can get it out of the way. So, let's see. We are going to turn to. We're going to go to Matthew 17, 1 through 5 first. Okay, so starting at verse 1 of chapter 17. After 6 days, Jesus took with him Peter and James and John his brother and led them high up on a mountain by themselves. And he was transfigured before them, and his face shone like the sun, and his clothes became white as light. And behold, there appeared to them Moses and Elijah talking with him. And Peter said to Jesus, Lord, it is good that we are here. If you wish, I will make 3 tents here, one for you and one for Moses and one for Elijah. He was still speaking when, behold, a bright cloud overshadowed them, and a voice from the cloud said, This is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased. Listen to him. When the disciples heard this, they fell on their faces and were terrified. So, he didn't take everybody up there with him. He chose a select few. The select few being the ones that are known as his inner circle. So these are his best friends. And we all have friends that we are closer to than others. And it can be for a million different reasons. Past experiences, for lack of better terms, kindred spirits. And that can just be personalities or like mesh easier. That's the easiest way to put it, I think, is, personalities can mesh easier. Maybe viewpoints are a bit more on like in line than others, if you're talking about in the church. And obviously when it comes to scriptural things, we should all be in line. But then, outside of scripturally, like we should all be in line, there are, different viewpoints or whatever where people choose to die on hills, and when people choose to die on hills, that can change relationships. And sometimes it's us that choose to die on the hill. Relationships are great, but they're weird. They're very weird. But I'm so thankful for them. We all have people that we're closer to than others, and personally, I am so thankful for the people that I am super close to, because they've changed my life. I am incredibly blessed, and here lately, it's definitely been more apparent to me than what I feel like it has in the past, and I'm so thankful, and like I'm just in awe of the blessings that God has bestowed upon me, because it's way more than I deserve, and I am so thankful. I'm incredibly blessed. So we're going to come back to this, though, because I have something. I have a thought, but we're going to save it for later. Now we're going to turn to Mark 9, verses 2 through 4. Okay, so again, we're talking about the transfiguration, but a different account. After 6 days, Jesus took with him Peter, James, and John, and led them up a high mountain by themselves, and he was transfigured before them, and his clothes became radiant, intensely white, as no one on earth could bleach them. And there appeared to them Elijah with Moses, and they were talking with Jesus. And Peter said to Jesus, "Rabbi, it is good that we are here. Let us make 3 tents, one for you, and one for Moses, and one for Elijah." So, again, another account of that. But let's look at the raising of Jairus' daughter. So let's go over to Mark 5:37, since we're already in Mark. Boom, boom, boom. Oh, I was backtracking, and then it decided to be goofy. 5, and then we're going to go 37. Let's see. And he allowed no one to follow him except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. Okay, well, I want to back up a little bit, because that doesn't give us much context. Let's go where the lady touches the hem of his garment. We're going to back up to verse 30, and we're going to start there. And Jesus, perceiving in himself that power had gone out from him, immediately turned about in the crowd and said, "Who touched my garments?" And his disciples said to him, "You see the crowd pressing against you, and yet you say, 'Who touched me?'" Like, you see all these people? All right. And he looked around to see who had done it. But the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came in fear, trembling, and fell down before him and told him the whole truth. And he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your disease." Here's a whole nother thing. Are we prepared for our relationship with Christ and with what he can do? Like, think about our faith in Jesus. Do we have as much faith as this lady? Like, side quest here for a second with me. Okay? So she believed in him enough without knowing anything about him other than what's been said, maybe witnessing a few things. She believed in him enough. If I just touch his garment, I don't even have to have like direct conversation. I don't have to have one-on-one. He doesn't have to touch me. If I just touch the hem of his garment, it's amazing. It's wonderful. To have that much belief in our Christ that, just a little interaction can change our life. Do we like thoroughly believe that? Like, just the, like the, what is it? The hymn, "Just a Little Talk with Jesus." Like, do we really think about how much prayer can do for us? Do we? It makes me think of a song that I've really been a fan of here lately. It's called "The Dealer." It's by Morgan Wallen. He does say the D word in there, unfortunately, but the song is talking about, the chorus, part of the chorus is talking to the dealer more than the cards I'm worrying about the cards that I'm dealt. He's talking about focusing on a prayer life. While mine and Morgan's religious views don't line up probably much at all, other than acknowledging that there is a God and that there is Christ. The thought of how much prayer is meant more for us maybe than it is for Christ, for God. Obviously, we get Christ gets something from it too. God gets something from it too, like the Father and the Son both do. But how important it is to our relationship with Him, and that is something we can even glean from the Mountain of Transfiguration. These friends thought greatly of Jesus, and yet who came first? God. God came first. I'm trying to word this from Jesus's viewpoint. The Father was more important. The Father came first. So Jesus was doing God's wishes. Obviously, the Trinity are all one, right? But Jesus was focused on doing what He needed to do to stay in line with the Father. And we, as friends, or in any relationship, should put God first. Husbands and wives, friends, brothers in the church that we may not necessarily interact with, which we're going to get to that here in a minute. It doesn't matter. Friends that we hunt with that may not be members of the church, are we putting God first? Hey, Sunday is going to be great. Well, no, I'm not going to be here, man, because I need to go worship my Creator. Thank Him for this wonderful Saturday out in the woods. Are we ready to have those kinds of conversations? Now's the time to be prepping ourselves. That's why we're doing these podcasts. One, because I can't wait for our next season another second. And secondly, because what a great lesson that we can apply to our hunting life, which should be tied in with Christ. How can you not see that sun rising in the morning and say a prayer? Or throw out your decoys, get back to your spot and be thanking Him for a safe trip to the woods, thanking Him for not falling in a gopher hole that's in a flooded field, or some sort of dugout, whatever, from some sort of critter, catfish, whatever the critter is that dug the hole. The fact that we have been safe up to that point, asking Him for a continued safe hunt, if it be His will, it's huge. And the fact that we get blessed with any kind of time out there is amazing. Man, God is good. But anyways, let's continue on. While he was still speaking, there came from the ruler's house some who said, "Your daughter is dead. Why trouble the teacher any further?" But overhearing what they said, Jesus said to the ruler of the synagogue, "Do not fear, only believe." And he allowed no one to follow him except Peter and James and John, the brother of James. They came to the house of the ruler of the synagogue, and Jesus saw a commotion, people weeping and wailing loudly. And when he had entered, he said to them, "Why are you making a commotion and weeping? The child is not dead, but sleeping." And they laughed at him. I have to hold that thought. They laughed at our Christ for having a different viewpoint than they had. They believed one thing, and obviously, medically, at one point, she was dead. Okay. But this man, and yes, it sounds crazy, but sometimes the crazy ideas are the ones that work, right? He was in a whole different lane, obviously, because he was Christ. But being in that whole different lane gave totally different viewpoints, totally different everything. What he did from he our God came down to earth and spent his time with us and didn't view it as a waste. Didn't view it as unnecessary. The dude trembled, was afraid, was concerned, not to a point of sinning, by the way. Huge thing there. But he went to the cross for us. Think about, again, going back to our relationship with Christ and with God. Our Creator did that for us. Wow. Right? Wow. But his relationship with these people. How many times have we been laughed at? You think your duck spread is big enough? you know, what are you doing calling like that? Quit. Don't you know these birds don't talk? Blah, 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 blah. Why are you sitting crosswind? You always got to have the wind in your back. Blah, 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 blah. There's so many different techniques that work in so many different ways on so many different days. So we're going to go to another passage now. So let's go to John 13:23. I have to scroll back up a little bit. Okay. So one of his disciples whom Jesus loved was reclining at table at Jesus' side. So Simon Peter motioned to him to ask Jesus of whom he was speaking. So that disciple, leaning back against Jesus, said to him, "Lord, who is it?" Jesus answered, "It is he to whom I will give this morsel of bread when I have dipped it." So when he had dipped the morsel, he gave it to Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot. So, a couple of relationships here that I think we really need to look at. First of all, Jesus' best friend is John. And something interesting that I had come across while doing my studying and everything, I use Google a lot because I've got these verses in mind, and I, such and such verses, whatever I'm using, and then it will pull up other, verses related to that to kind of help me, I guess, speed study. It helps how I personally study. And so then I go through and then, I'll back up, I'll look at context and different things like that. But one thing interesting about the whole thing about the disciple who Jesus loved is, this is the AI overview. The disciple whom Jesus loved is mentioned 5 times in the Gospel of John. The one we just read, which is 13:23, 19:26, 20 verse 2, 21 verse 7, and 21 verse 20. This unnamed disciple is the author of the Gospel of John and refers to himself with this title to express humility in his intimate relationship with Jesus rather than pride. I've never looked at it that way, and it makes sense. It almost seems boastful, but I can't say that it is. And it would be an interesting discussion to have with somebody. And maybe, since we've been doing a lot of character studies this year, maybe whenever we attempt to pick it back up this fall, because obviously I've mentioned that we're going to have a little bit of a break of somewhat. It could be all the way to November, depending on how things go. It may be shorter, so it just kind of depends. But whenever we pick back up, maybe we look at John. This is really interesting because, I love how he recounts whenever he asks Jesus who it is. He leans up against him, and I almost see it as like a silly thing, "Who is it, Lord?" Because they were sitting next to each other. The tables back then were different, so they were already kind of reclined-ish. Anyways, it's a really interesting dynamic of things here, because I want to dive more into this because Judas is on my list of people I want to do a character study on with this podcast, and they didn't know he was going to They didn't know he was going to betray Jesus. It doesn't even seem like they realize it whenever he gets the morsel. It doesn't even seem like they fully get it whenever he's like, do what you must do. It just doesn't seem like it clicks. And he goes off and does his thing, right? But his relationship seems good with the other apostles, other disciples. There we go. That was the word I was actually looking for, was disciples. But the other disciples, up until the betrayal, which obviously they all scatter and everything else, but is his relationship like Judas and Jesus' relationship is different, but there are still similarities. Jesus gives enough of himself to wash his feet along with everybody else's feet. He could have chosen not to wash Judas's feet. He could have chosen not to wash Peter's feet. He could have chosen not to wash Thomas's feet. He could have chose and picked and chose whose feet he was going to wash. He could have just washed John's feet because they were friends, like closer friends. Because obviously these guys spending so much time with him would have had close relationships of some sort. But he shared more information with certain ones than he did others. He shared certain relationships more so with others. He asks John to take care of his mom whenever he's on the cross. That's a big deal. You don't just ask anybody that. So I think we've looked well enough at best friend relationships. Let's see. Let's go over to Acts 15:36 through 39. And after some days, Paul said to Barnabas, "Let us return and visit the brothers in every city where we proclaim the word of the Lord, and now see how they are." Now Barnabas wanted to take with them John called Mark, but Paul thought best not to take with them one who had withdrawn from them in Pamphylia and had not gone with them to the work. And there arose a sharp disagreement, so that they separated from each other. Barnabas took Mark with him and sailed away to Cyprus. But Paul chose Silas and departed, having been commended by the brothers to the grace of the Lord. And he went through Syria and Cilicia, strengthening the churches. There's one more verse that I'm looking for in this. It is okay not to see eye to eye with a brother, obviously, and we have a scriptural example of this. So it's okay not to see eye to eye, as long as it's not over a scriptural matter. Scriptural matters are a little bit different, but whenever it comes down to something like this, these guys, both doing great works for the church, can't see eye to eye, can't work through this, or like it's not being resolved to where they stay together, which, I mean, Bible spreads further with this division, right? Now, that sounds horrible because we hear the word division and we think instantly of all the bad accounts that we have heard of here in America of how churches split. Church splits are never good. I don't like church splits. Nobody likes church splits, right? But these two guys can't line up. Okay, you're still a member of the church. I still love you. We just can't go any further at the moment together. Have you ever had somebody like that? It happens. And it's okay. Because if you look later on, let's see, which one do I want to go to first? Let's go to 2 Timothy 4:11. Luke alone is with me. Get Mark and bring him with you, for he is very useful to me for ministry. So he did not want Mark there at that time. Whenever we read in Acts, but now whenever we read in Timothy, he wants Mark there. So there are times when we do have to step away, but we see coming back full circle to where they're together again, are going to be together again. Space can be good. It allows you to think, to process, to perhaps give you perspective on somebody else's viewpoint. Peace can come from a good break from somebody. I say good break because there are times when we maybe don't handle things correctly, and it's unfortunate. So we have to make sure that we're handling things correctly. So self-evaluation and assessing things is extremely important. So perhaps there's issues that you have with somebody that you hunt with or something like that, since this is a hunting podcast and we want to discuss all things, not all things hunting, and it's not a hunting podcast, this is a hunting series. So we have an issue with somebody that we don't see eye to eye with on our views of hunting, and that can be a million different things. It can be something as simple as decoy spreads. It can be something as simple as their view towards water spotting. Silly things. It could be even more so than that. They may not like to hunt in the same area as you do for whatever reason. Okay. You go do your thing. I'm going to do my thing. I'm going to find my happiness in my hobby. You go do your thing as a Christian. What you're doing is great. I'm going to go do my thing over here, which is good. We're both benefiting the church. If you do this, never slander the other. Never talk bad about the other. Because then you end up in another situation. Which, let's go to, I believe it's Matthew 17. Let's see. Okay, 18, 15 through 17. My bad. If your brother sins against you, go and tell him his fault. Between you and him alone, if he listens to you, you have gained your brother. But if he does not listen, take one or two others along with you, that every charge may be established by the evidence of 2 or 3 witnesses. If he refuses to listen to them, tell it to the church. And if he refuses to listen even to the church, let him be to you as a Gentile and a tax collector. So a brother that is sinning against you has to be handled differently. I think it's so important that it can affect your worship. We got to remember that. So if somebody has wronged you and it's bad enough, like obviously we can forgive and we can move on. Think of, the 70 times 7, the 490, so to speak. We can continue to forgive, much like Christ forgives us. It's not so much that something is so heinous that we can't forgive. Because even if we separate from somebody, we should still forgive them. But maybe the hurt from it was so bad you can't have the same kind of relationship you had before. Maybe that relationship now looks really different. Maybe for both's well-being, it needs to be different. And not so much necessarily from like a sinful standpoint, because hopefully they fix whatever it is without having to bring other witnesses and to get the church involved in everything else, because that's a whole nother mess that I really wasn't prepared to get into in today's podcast episode. Not that I'm not wanting to, I'm running out of time, and it wasn't on my to-do list for today's episode. We can cover it down the road. We've got nothing but time. But sometimes there just needs to be space, and that is A-okay. because with space, there can be evaluation, assessing of mental health, assessing of views, assessing of how you are doing in relation to your walk with Christ. How can you get closer? All important questions that should be asked. Great way to actually end the podcast, asking yourself those questions, because it's going to help you be better. Are you prepared? That's right. It ended up being the whole theme for this year's hunting series, right? Are you prepared? Are you prepared for these relationships? This ended up being really cool. Wasn't the direction that I had fully seen this going. I don't think I'm fully done yet either. I got a little bit more I want to kind of like try to expand on, whatever. And that being the whole others, like people like getting parts of you, like different parts of you. Obviously it's necessary. Obviously we've seen how it was done with Jesus. David's another great example. Jonathan was his best friend, right? But he had other people that he interacted with and had relationships with that were good. Makes it trying to think of the word that I want to use. Well, I mean, it's life, right? Things go up, they go down. Not everybody has to be fully let in. There's some things, some people you just don't want to share certain information with, and that's okay. You don't gotta lie about it. Just find ways to truthfully not share it. Just be like, I'd rather not say right now. I can't really go into that subject. Whatever. You don't gotta make up some sort of crazy story or lie or whatever. Just be like, we can't talk about that. Or maybe you just have to go completely quiet. And even completely quiet, I don't think it's completely quiet. Because if, you're interacting with them at church, or if they contact you for a biblical reason, I think it's good to answer. I think it's to show up and support those people, even if you guys are creating a space. You can have a safe distance. That's okay. Y'all be good. Talk one more time, at least, before we close out the hunting series. I think the next one will be the last one, because we're like right there at the start of hunting season, and that's how we ended last year's. So, yeah. Thank you guys so much. Have a good one, and see you next week on the Calloused Podcast.